Hey guys, I'm here with Ollie Abdaal, YouTuber, course creator, and now the host of the Deep Dives podcast. Ollie, thanks for joining us here for Audience Driven.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. This is the second time we're speaking. I remember being interviewed on your podcast like ages ago. So it's
Yeah,
it's cool. It's cool to be back.
one of the most popular episodes we've had.
No
So
way.
thanks,
Oh,
thanks
nice.
for taking some time. I'd love to talk to you about the beginnings of your channel and specifically how you found time to do YouTube so consistently while studying in med school.
Yeah. So for the first year that I was doing my channel, I was a final year medical student at Cambridge, and then for the next 2 years, I was working full time as a doctor. And so for those 3 years, it really was a case of finding the time in evenings and weekends, and even during the working day, to work on the channel. A few things that I'm just trying to distill like large amounts of experience into a few things. This is exactly the sort of stuff we also teach on our course, the Part-Time YouTuber Academy, #plug. But basically, I think it's the key insight for me was in recognizing that there are different stages of the YouTube production process. And I got this from the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, which is something I recommend to everyone. I read that early 2019 or something. And before then, it was a case of like, I was just struggling to put out a video one at a time. And it really felt like quite a lot of a grind. But once I read that book and realized that essentially a video has different stages of production, from idea to research, writing, filming, editing, post-production-y stuff, and then publication. And that crucially, it was the filming part of it that requires me to be in my room with the camera in front of me and a microphone and the lights, and has a huge sunk cost to setting everything up. That meant that I could find random pockets of time here and there to work on idea generation and writing. And then all I would have to do is batch film videos like 2 or 3 at a time. And some days even more than that if I could really manage it. Because then the sunk cost of setting up the camera and then taking it all down, that sort of starts to pay for itself when you film multiple videos in a single session. And so what I'd end up doing was, while I was in lectures, if a lecture was particularly boring, or even if I was at work and I was in between patients, kind of waiting for blood results to arrive or something, I would open up Notion on the crappy Windows computers, or on the Notes app on my phone or whatever, and I would just start drafting out videos. And I have so many videos that I planned out through that process. If I had downtime at work, sitting on the toilet for like 10, 15 minutes at a time, I'd be planning out videos. And then when it would come to a filming day, so an evening or a weekend, I'd be able to film more than one video at a time. And I think that's really the way forward if you want to take YouTube seriously, or any kind of content seriously. You figure out which bits you can batch. Thank you, Tim Ferriss, for that advice from the 4-Hour Workweek. And you figure out which bits are the bits that you can steal time out of your schedule to work on without needing a whole huge batch of deep work.
What type of quality standard did you hold yourself to in the beginning? I know it's kind of hard when you're starting. You don't even know what quality standard you can hit, but how have you thought about your standards of quality with your consistency?
Yeah, so I didn't think about quality at all at the beginning. My theory was that my first 100 videos were going to be absolutely terrible, and so I needed to get through those first 100 videos as quickly as possible, basically. And so even if I'd made a video where I thought, oh, it's not great, I thought, you know what, it doesn't matter. This is a long game. I'm in this for the long haul. Who cares if a video is a dud? That's fine, and put it out anyway. And weirdly, like a couple of videos where I thought the video was bad, the video ended up actually doing really well. And so I realized over time that this is not a perfect correlation, but quite often I am a poor judge of the value of my own videos. Partly because of something that Derek Sivers says, which is that sometimes what's obvious to you can be amazing to other people. And so if I do a listicle of 10 productivity hacks, it's like, oh, this is all standard stuff. Everyone's read Getting Things Done. Everyone's read Make Time. Everyone's read Atomic. Apparently, actually, that's not true. Like, not everyone has read Getting Things Done and Atomic Habits. People aspire to read these books, but don't actually read them. Whereas because me, and I imagine you, have been drinking the productivity Kool-Aid for such a long time, things that can seem obvious and like not interesting to us can be amazing to other people. So basically, to answer your original question, no bar for quality at all. It's only recently in the channel that we started to think about, okay, now we actually need to think about making quality videos.
That's really interesting. This idea of like the curse of knowledge that we have. Sometimes it's hard to separate ourselves from it and know like, oh, people will still get value out of this. How often does that come out now? Because I'm sure you, being in this space, have learned so much, studied so much, and there's so much that you kind of hear and you might even like roll your eyes at because you've heard it so many times. How often do you have to remind yourself now to make a video around something that you feel like may not be new to you?
Yeah, I mean, clearly not often enough, because as you were saying this, I'm like, damn, Jay, that's really good advice. Because just yesterday I was having a deep work day where I was thinking about YouTube content ideas. And for a lot of the ideas that I had, I was thinking, oh no, this is too obvious. Everyone knows this. But I wish I had this reminder yesterday to realize that actually, no, not everyone knows this. And so like for me and you and the people in our sort of creator productivity bro space, we care about, what Tiago Forte is putting out at the cutting edge of productivity. But realistically, like 99% of the world doesn't even use a calendar and doesn't know how to manage their time. So, there's only so much you need to go into like Zettelkasten and whether you should use Roam or Evernote to figure out your evergreen note structure compared to, these are the tips that will actually move the needle for your productivity rather than just sort of helping us helping us enjoy the productivity space more. So yeah, I think we all always need that reminder that keeping it simple is often the way forward.
Do you have like a viewer avatar that you think about when you make a video for somebody?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's yes. The answer is yes, and it's changed over time. Um, and I think this speaks to how a YouTube channel always kind of evolves over time, and one way of intentionally evolving it is to think about who is the avatar, who's the person I want to be targeting with my videos. I know Pat Flynn talks about this in Superfans. He says you want to think about targeting that person who is going to be your superfan, who's going to scream your name from the rooftops about how amazing you are. And so in the early days of my channel, if I thought of that person, it was, a 16 or 17-year-old applying to medical school in the UK and possibly wanting to go to Oxford or Cambridge. That is like a very, very, very niche audience. And I think the channel succeeded partly because I was initially targeting a very specific audience. Over time, the target audience expanded, but I always had this avatar in mind. And so like last year or 2 years ago, like, yeah, when the channel I think was on a few 100,000 subscribers, the avatar was a 22-year-old medical student in London. I had like a name for him. His name was Muhammad. He was probably South Asian, interested in entrepreneurship, interested in reading, but could never really find the time for reading, interested in tech, but not in like an ostentatious, showy offy way, more in a, enjoys being a connoisseur of tech, interested in Apple products, likes wearing an Apple Watch because of how it makes him feel, wants to start a business so that he can escape the 9 to 5. Even though he doesn't like disagree with the 9 to 5, he just thinks it would be nice to have the option of like escaping the 9 to 5 if he really wants to. Understands the idea of passive income, listens to podcasts, but wishes he could listen to more of them. Reads lots of books, but realizes that he doesn't remember what he's reading because he doesn't have a way of taking notes from books. I have this all written out on like
Wow.
this like 2-page elaborate avatar. And recently we've realized that okay, now because the thing with the channel is that it's always got to keep evolving. Like, targeting that same person over and over again gets stale after a while. And for the last few weeks, I've been feeling the channel's been feeling a bit stale. And so yesterday, while I was in my deep work day, I was thinking, okay, who is the new avatar we want to target? And I still haven't figured it out, but I reckon it's someone like age 21 to 40, probably has a job rather than a student. Again, interested in entrepreneurship, wants to be financially independent, probably quite a high income job, quite educated, resonates with like the intellectual academic kind of content far more so than the superficial clickbaity type of content. So that's sort of how I'm now thinking about the audience avatar. But I think the messaging on our channel and like the branding and the icons and the colors and the fonts are still stuck in the old avatar days where we were aiming at students. So it's just about like these are the things I'm thinking about now. Like, how do we make sure that we are still on brand while targeting a new, slightly older, possibly more sophisticated audience, while also not like leaving the students behind, as it were.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge that I have no experience with because I'm not at your level of scale. But I'd imagine, you started with the 16-year-old who's trying to go to med school, niche specific, as you said. As you get to a level of scale, it's kind of a question of, do I expand to more avatars or do I generalize my avatar?
Yeah.
Both of which seem challenging on a like per video basis.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking. Like, I hadn't quite thought of it. Like generalized versus more avatars. I think that actually could work nicely, and maybe that's a solution to our issues because one of the problems that we're having is when with our channel we talk about a bunch of stuff. It's basically all things related to personal development. So everything, and a lot of people say that it seems like your channel doesn't really have a niche. And this reminds me of something that Tim Ferriss once said at one point in a niche interview, where he said that when it comes to his blog, he wants every blog post to be absolutely loved by 10% of his audience and broadly ignored by 90%. And he just changes up what 10% of the audience that is. And that means he can have like a large, he can go fully in depth, like nerd out on exactly how to take notes in something, knowing it's only going to resonate with a small amount of people, but it's going to resonate with them so much. And that is a better thing than to sort of resonate with 80% of your audience. So I think maybe that's like a way that we'll start thinking about it. This is good. You've given me some food for thought. Thank you.
For people who are just getting started, though, would you recommend this hyper focus on one specific person with like one specific path in mind and one specific set of problems? Do you think that was key to getting initial traction?
I think there are, when it comes to figuring out your initial audience, I think there are different ways of doing it. I don't feel like there's a right answer. One pattern I have noticed is that the more niche you start out, the faster you'll grow. The riches are in the niches, like niche down to blow up. There's all these like cliches around that, and they're all cliches for a reason because they're true. If someone were to start a YouTube channel today and make a video called 5 productivity hacks, no one's going to watch that video unless it's like really, really, really well done, which is unlikely. If someone's just starting a YouTube channel, they're not going to be at Peter McKinnon levels of skill level to be able to do an absolutely sick video. But if you do kind of how I use Zettelkasten in Obsidian to take notes from nonfiction audiobooks, that's like sufficiently niche that I think if you were to double down on that space and become the guy or the gal to go to for that kind of topic, then slowly you can expand out over time, and you're more likely to reach an audience that way rather than trying to make generic iPhone 13 review content.
When you were beginning the channel and you're still in med school, or maybe your first 2, maybe you're like year 2, year 3, and you're being really, really consistent, at what point did you start layering on other considerations besides being consistent? Like we hear the consistency advice a lot, but like that's probably necessary but not sufficient. I'm looking to see what are some of the other ingredients that you've pulled in with consistency to find the level of success that you have.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, consistency is like 95% of the answer. Like even today, even at the scale that we're at, where I feel like we need to think about quality a bit more, broadly, if you're consistent and you just put out 2 videos a week, then it's kind of hard to go very wrong from that. The other consideration then is like, is this video actually useful? Is it actually going to add value to my audience? For the first time for the first time ever, we actually deleted a video off the channel like last week because we put a video out that had a bit of a clickbaity title. I had a very clickbaity title, didn't deliver on the promise. It was too short. It was a sponsored video. Like objectively, it was not a video that added much value. And that's the only time in 4.5 years of doing this that I've thought, okay, this video is so bad that it needs to go. And so there is a consideration of, is this video going to help people? But generally, that's kind of a default thought process anyway. Very few of us, at least in this space where you're kind of making educational content, it's very hard to make a video that doesn't help at least some people. And even this one that we deleted, it had 50% dislikes, but it had 50% likes. Some people liked the video, which is weird because I thought it was an objectively bad video. And so honestly, I do think consistency is like 95% of the answer, but the other things are focus on adding value to the audience and trying to get a little bit better with each video. That's a really hard thing to maintain. Like if you had the expectation or the wish that I want every video to be better than the last, I think that's a recipe for like disaster and burnout, because like every video is not going to be better than the last at some point. But yeah, just trying to do your best to add value is 5% of it, and 95% of it is being consistent with doing that.
That's great. I feel like consistency being 95% important, that's something most people can grasp. They can do that. They can brute force their way through that.
Yeah, it's kind of like working out. Like it doesn't really matter what you do at the gym, but if you go to the gym 4 times a week and lift weights, chances are you're going to be in pretty good shape. Like, yes, you can layer on a few things beyond that, but really showing up is most of the result.
You said the title of this video was clickbaity, and I feel like the word clickbait has been kind of villainized over years, but for people who are putting a ton of effort into even writing email content and then sending it out and it not getting opened or clicked or nobody hitting play, I feel like these titles and these headlines are really important. How do you think about titles, headlines, things like that?
Yeah, this is the title question is the bane of my life, because clickbait does work. It gets people into the video. But then there's a good video that Veritasium put out a few weeks ago called Clickbait is Unreasonably Effective. There's a really, really good video explaining why clickbait is unreasonably effective and how changing the title of a video can sometimes have massive effects on the performance of a video. And if this is a video that's taken you ages to put together and it's just like tweaking a title is going to have such a big effect, then the title is so important. the way that I think the way that he separates them, it's like there's the good kind of there's the bad kind of clickbait, which is the sort of the thing that entices you to click on something where you don't get the expected payoff. And then there's the good kind of clickbait, which is this is intriguing, this is interesting, I want to click on this video. And then your expectation is satisfied by the video. And so the way we think about our titles is, how do we create enough intrigue in the video? How do we make a promise to the viewer that is then actually satisfied in the video, or at least very, very early on in the video, so that they know what they're getting? And the mistake we made with this video, the one that we deleted, like in original title was revealing my IQ. And the video did not reveal my IQ. In fact, the video was a video about this human benchmark test where I was testing my reaction time and a few visual memory, verbal memory, spatial memory, which is somewhat correlated with IQ, but it was just obvious to the viewers that they've been clickbaited into watching this video. And there's the thing with clickbait is that, like, people have a clickbait radar, and if their clickbait radar starts to go off, they will lose a lot of trust and respect for the creator and will start to see the video in a negative light. So had I titled that video, "I took the human benchmark test," it would have done all right. People wouldn't have been annoyed by it. It still would have been a pretty, like, not particularly useful video, because, like, whatever. But people wouldn't have been disliking it and thinking like, "Oh my god, I'm subscribing because you're a clickbaiter." But titling it like something a little bit too clickbaity was the problem. But then there's a balance here, because, I once had a video called "Why Writing Online Changed My Life," or "How Writing Online Changed My Life," and it did absolutely terribly. And then I changed the title to "Why Writing Online Made Me a Millionaire," and suddenly it massively outperformed every other video, straight because of that title change. Now that is clickbait. Like, writing online didn't really make me a millionaire. And I guess I'm not even a millionaire, depending on how you define it, like paper versus actual liquid net worth and all that kind of stuff. But there is artistic license in that title. But clearly the video was sufficiently good and sufficiently, kept people engaged to the point where no one said, "Oh my god, clickbait title." Equally, one of the most popular videos on my channel is called "How I Ranked First at Cambridge University," my essay memorization framework. Now, there's a lot of artistic license there. I didn't actually rank first at Cambridge University. I ranked joint first, but actually second, and I won an exam performance prize 1 year out of 6, like in my third year. And there's a lot of nuance there. But when you take that nuance, you artistic licenseify it into a clickbait headline: "How I ranked first at Cambridge University." Oh, that's intriguing. People click on the video. It's a 20-minute long video that goes in depth in this method. And genuinely, I think it's a fantastic video. And clearly people did as well, which is why the video did so well on the algorithm. So it's so hard to think about titles, because there's this balance between being sufficiently clickbait to get clicks, but not so clickbait that people recognize that you're being clickbaity, and not so clickbait that you're not delivering on the promise that you on the promise you made in the title.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's hard.
there's like a level of alignment that you need, and as long as there's alignment and deliver on that promise, it seems like that's a winning formula. I don't know if you know Dickie Bush very well, guy on
Yeah, he
Twitter
does a lot
with
of
30 for
Twitter
30.
threads.
Yeah. He had a tweet recently. He's like, a 0 out of 10 headline with a 10 out of 10 piece of content, nobody sees it. 10 out of 10 headline with a 0 out of 10 piece of content, clickbait, nobody's happy. But if you do like a 10 out of 10 plus a 10 out of 10, nobody's upset that the headline was clickbaity, and it's actually able to help people because they open it or they click play.
That's a good way of thinking of it.
You launched a cohort-based course, maybe even close to a year ago now, called the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. When did you decide, and how did you decide, that doing a live course that requires a lot of time and attention from you was a worthwhile investment of your time?
Yeah, this is a good question. So Part-Time YouTuber Academy launched in like October 2020. Had the idea in like August, September time, bashed out some Post-it notes, figured out an outline for the course. And initially I was going to do it as a standard self-hosted, self-paced online course hosted on Podia or something. I know Pat loves Teachable. I love Podia personally. And then I had a call with Tiago Forte and David Perel. And in that half an hour, they convinced me to do a live cohort instead. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So thank you, Tiago and David, for that. Basically what they said was, if you care about the success of your students, you would do a live cohort, because the completion rate is so much higher for live cohorts. The thing that's holding people back is usually the accountability and community side of things, rather than not enough knowledge. And I was thinking, because I'd never really sold anything before. I was like, but like, can I charge more than $200? Like, I'd feel really bad. What if people don't like it? What if they think I'm a snake oil salesman? And they were like, okay, fine. What if people think you're a snake oil salesman? But what Tiago said was that, like, if you had to charge $1,000 for this course, if you were forced to, how would it change your approach to it? I was like, damn, okay, if I had to charge $1,000 for a course, I would be ridiculously involved in it. I'd be doing whatever the hell I could to make sure the students are having a great time and learning something from it and getting the experience. Whereas if I was charging $200 for it, I'd feel all I have to do is show up once, record a bunch of videos, and stick it online and forget about it. And I realized that, okay, let's at least give this a go. And the unit economics of like a live cohort course are just so much higher than a self-paced one, that it's just been the single decision that has most accelerated our business in terms of revenue.
And the crazy thing is, you were still doing medicine when you were doing that. So how are you carving time out to do a course and YouTube now? And you're probably writing an email newsletter to a degree. Like, how are you combining all of these things and doing them all part-time while still focusing a lot on medicine?
Yeah, so actually, I was not doing medicine when we launched the course. And I think that's part of what made it possible, because of all the weird time zones and all the live events that we had. It would have been hard to make that compatible with a medical rota that changes all the time and you're always on call and all that jazz. So actually, that was one of the things in which, because I took a break from medicine for a year, intending to travel the world, but then the pandemic happened. And so while I was stuck in my house in Cambridge, that was when I thought, okay, you know what, let's actually give this live cohort thing a go, where I now have genuine control of my schedule, which is something I've never had before, having been at med school for 6 years and then working full time for 2 years.
Okay, well, I was obviously wrong about that. How did that change your time put into YouTube then? Were you putting more time into YouTube at that time as well?
Yeah, so the weird thing is that, like, I think this is a perfect illustration of Parkinson's Law, which is that work expands to fill the time you allocate to it. So when I was working full time in the pandemic, when there was like loads of stuff going on, I was banging out 3 videos a week, and we only had a team of like 3 people at the time. We were banging out 3 videos a week on the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel was doing really well. As soon as I quit the job and suddenly I had all of the free time in the world, suddenly it felt like a real heavy lift to make videos. And I was making only like 1 or 2 videos a week. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, how could I have possibly been making 3 videos a week while working full time and doing it in the evenings and weekends? And just, I don't know what the hell I was doing with my time. Other than making YouTube videos. And I realized that I was doing a lot of procrastinating, because I do that. But B, a lot of my time was being sucked up by other business related things. Because as we launched the YouTuber Academy, there was a ton of operation stuff associated with that, creating all the content. And then as we expanded the team to accommodate the increase in sort of stuff that we had to do for the YouTuber Academy, suddenly I'm like, damn, instead I've gone from managing a team of 2.5 people to managing a team of like 8.5 people. Like, what the hell's going on there? Having to learn about leadership and management, accountability, and being really, really bad at it. And so all of those things were sucking my time, to the point where I was actually not paying the attention I needed to pay on the YouTube channel for the last few months. And like last weekend, my team had an intervention. They all got together on a Zoom call on a Saturday, and they were like, right, Ali, the YouTube channel is going stale. And the reason is because I wasn't showing up enough for it. I was hoping I'd be able to outsource all aspects of it. So all I would have to do is show up and talk to a camera. And they said that, look, that's fine, but like, there is some magic in me showing up to the YouTube channel. And so what we're trying to do now is, where I spend, like, really, we now have a team of like 12 people. We've hired another 6 in the last week. So we'll have 18 people as of like next week. But I'm trying to offload everything unrelated to content, because content is like my zone of genius. Whereas all of the operations, all of the finance, all the HR, all the legal, all of the other aspects around running a business, I'm offloading to my team, and we're going to figure out how to make that work.
Let's talk about team a little bit. I would love to hear which hires you made first, and in thinking about sequencing for other creators who are feeling like they may be stretched and they want to make their first hire, what hires you would recommend making in what order?
Yeah, so the first hire I made was outsourcing editing. And I think this is always the first step if you're a video creator, just because editing takes up a disproportionately large amount of time. People say they enjoy it, but like, the amount of value you generate for your channel/business by editing your own videos is usually, in most people's cases, not justified. If you still want to do the editing, then that's fine. Like, but for people who have goals of treating their thing as a business and trying to blitz scale, as it were, outsourcing editing has got to be the first thing. Initially, I actually outsourced to a freelancer. His name was Kevin from Ireland. He was pretty good. But then one of my mentors encouraged me to hire a full-time employee. And so Christian, who's from Romania, who's still with the team, he became like a full-time editor. I'd probably advise it doing it like you don't normally need a full-time editor because that's a lot of editing time. People can easily get away with outsourcing to a freelancer initially. And then I think the next hire is a sort of jack of all trades, right-hand man / gal type person who can help with research, writing, and idea generation, which is like the other really important parts other than the editing. And so that, we had hired a guy called Angus who started off as a writer for the team, working freelance, and then became full-time. And now he's our head of operations and my right-hand man and manages the whole business, basically. So it's grown very quickly. But I think doing it in that order, editing first, followed by writing and research and idea generation. I think with those two hires, and it could even be the same person. You could get someone who is an editor and also an idea writer type person. That is the thing that really helps, gives you a step change in the output that you can do as a YouTuber, as a creator, because those are the most time consuming bits that don't necessarily benefit from your personal touch necessarily. I think as long as you as the creator, as long as you're involved in the idea generation phase a little bit and in brainstorming the idea, then someone else can research the content. And this sort of varies depending on what niche you're in. If you're a tech YouTuber, your value is in the personal experience you're bringing to it rather than in being able to reel off tech specs. So someone else can research the tech specs for you. If you're writing a book summary, I'm about to film a video after this, doing a summary of a book called The Millionaire Fastlane. And I listened to this book on Audible. I took a few notes of like the key salient points that resonated with me. I then screenshotted those points and gave it to Gareth, one of my team members, to expand those points out, get the quotes from the book, get the examples, because I don't need to spend my own time rereading the book to get the examples because I've read it once and I know what's in my head. And so based on his points, I can then riff because then I can like bring my kind of secret sauce to it. So it's things like that you can find ways to separate yourself from the business, but without going so far in the opposite direction that it loses your personal touch.
That's great. Hiring is a big challenge for a lot of creators, and not even just the act of letting go, but finding good people to hire. How did you think about and work towards finding the right people to bring onto the team?
Yeah, I think I'm a really bad person to look to advice about hiring because I was just making shit up as I went along. And so everyone I've hired basically through posting making a page on my website saying I'm looking for a whatever to join the team. Here is what it looks like. Here's how much the salary is, et cetera, et cetera. And then just putting it out to Twitter, Instagram, newsletter, YouTube community post and hoping for the best. It's only like actually 2 days ago, I was having dinner with a friend of mine who's CEO of a $70 million Series B punk company. And he recommended a book called Who? The A Method of Hiring. And another friend of mine recommended this a few months ago. And I've just started reading this book and I was thinking, damn, if only I had read this book 2 years ago before I made my first hire, I would have not been blindly stumbling in the dark thinking I had to invent hiring from scratch because I knew nothing about it. So I really wish I discovered this book before. So I would be a terrible person to listen to for advice about hiring because I was just making shit up as I went along.
It's interesting though that you went to basically the networks of people who are already following your work. I think there's probably some benefit and wisdom in that because they know your voice, they know what you're about. They've kind of been integrated into it just from following along.
Yeah, I think there is some benefit to that. And that's the nice thing about being a creator relative to being any other sort of type of person, whereby when you have an audience that's engaged, you could potentially find good hires from that audience. The risk is that you don't want to find someone who's too much of a fanboy / fangirl because that's like a weird kind of relationship. When you're hiring people, you sort of want them you kind of want that relationship to feel as close to equals as possible, I think. Because what I've been realizing over time is that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just making shit up as I go along. But my words carry more weight when I say them to team members because I'm the boss, and it's just how things work. I think that dynamic already exists. If you further add to that the dynamic of someone being so much of a fan that they already think whatever comes out of my mouth is gospel truth, that is potentially problematic. And we had like 1 or 2 instances in which that has been a problem. So I think there is that slight risk of hiring people that already know you, but I think that's a risk very much worth taking. And I want to continue to hire from my audience.
Well, to kind of wrap things up here, you are just starting a new podcast called Deep Dives, and it has a huge video component to it. You're not new to podcasting. You've done an audio podcast in the past and even had a video component to it. But as you're thinking about Deep Dives and launching this, How did you think about the video component and how important it was and the level of quality that you held that standard to?
Yeah, so we just launched our podcast deep dive, which is sort of like an interview series. It's basically like a copy of Tim Ferriss' show, Lex Friedman, School of Greatness, Tom Bilyeu, Diary of a CEO, like these other sort of interview type podcasts. I knew from day one that video was going to be our strength. Like I think video is our unfair advantage. You know, I'm a YouTuber first and everything. Well, I was a doctor first. I'm a YouTuber first and everything else secondarily. And these other podcasts, usually they start off as podcasters and then they realize, oh crap, video is cool. Let's switch to video. Whereas our model is we want to go video first. Everything is all about video. Because really the way you grow a podcast isn't through the podcast apps, because you know it's through posting video clips on YouTube and on social. And so people realize, oh, you've got a podcast, and then they subscribe on the podcast app. Even then, like so many people listen to podcasts by watching YouTube videos for them. So given that video was our unfair advantage, we were like, definitely video first. The other major benefit of video is that it just massively increases your ability to create offshoot content from the podcast. I think Matt D'Avella does this really well. And this is more like the early phases of his YouTube channel, because right now he doesn't do this so much. But in the early days of his YouTube channel, when he had his podcast, The Ground Up Show, those would be beautifully filmed. And even though it's like 3 or 4 years old, we still looked at that as being absolute gold standard for how I think a video podcast should be produced, because it's just so freaking beautiful. And he would take sound bites, like he interviewed James Clear, and you know he would take a sound bite about habit building or something, and create a YouTube video based around that sound bite, kind of like a mini documentary. And it worked for him because he's got lots of experience of being a documentary filmmaker. But there's actually there's a formula here, and I through obsessively watching Matt D'Avella over the years and seeing other people do this, I realized what I wanted to do is, you know, let's say I've been speaking to the founder of Gymshark for 2 hours, and so we've got the 2 hour recording. But let's say at one point he talks for 2 minutes about his philosophy on goal setting. That's quite interesting. We could take that and build a whole actual proper video on the main YouTube channel about Ben Francis's philosophy of goal setting. It wouldn't be called that. It would be called like how to set, I don't know, how to set goals to build $1 billion business, or something sufficiently clickbaity, but
sufficiently clickbaity, yes.
And it would include the soundbite and would be a story built around that. And had we had an audio podcast, that would not have been possible. We would have been stuck using audiograms or using just loads and loads of B-roll, which everyone kind of tell doesn't really work. And the way that what I'm hoping, so that we've only put out like 1 or 2 episodes now, but what I'm hoping is that the way this podcast will grow over time is because that offshoot content, which I'll be able to put on my main channel, will make people realize, oh my God, this guy has a podcast. This sounds cool. I want to subscribe to the podcast. It's a very, very, very long-winded way of saying video is the way that I think we're going to grow our podcast.
Ollie, this has been awesome. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Oh yeah, thanks very much for having me on, Jay. If people want to learn more, they can check out my YouTube channel, just Ali Abdaal on YouTube, or the website aliabdaal.com.